Good afternoon, distinguished guests, distinguished panelists. Welcome to our panel entitled The Strategic Triangle of the IMEC, Three Seas Initiative and Danube Corridor. We address an important topic, three connectivity initiatives from different regions now converge in Europe. The India-Middle East Economic Corridor, IMEC, launched at the 2023 G20 in Delhi. It's a multimodal link from India to Europe via Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel. In response to China's Belt and Road, the Three Seas Initiative started in 2015, spans from the Baltic to the Black Sea and has become a tool for Central and Eastern European strategic autonomy. The Danube Corridor, the oldest, links Rotterdam to Constanța, or has the potential to link effectively, passing through 10 European states and extending into the Caucasus and Central Asia. These three architectures share a political demand for trusted, resilient, rule-based connectivity in a world where Suez, Hormuz, the Bab el-Mandeb, the Northern Sea Route, and the Belt and Road can all be weaponized. Yet, they remain institutionally weak. IMEC is frozen in Gaza and the Israeli-Iran war. The Three Seas Initiative is underfinanced relative to its 111 billion euros project pipeline, and the Danube Corridor is a patchwork of national authorities and TEN-T fragments. The 2026 Three Seas Initiative Summit in Zagreb, Dubrovnik confirmed the strategic ambition, but did not yet solve the integration problem. This panel asks the central question: can IMEC, Three Seas Initiative, and Danube Triangle become a single integrated European spine anchored at Constanța, Gdansk, Trieste, Rijeka, and Piraeus, maybe, that gives Europe the strategic depth it needs to absorb the consequences of the war in Ukraine, the partial US withdrawal, and the rise of the Indo-Pacific connectivity? And what does, for example, Croatia, Poland, the United States, and Romania each need to make that happen? I would like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Sandro KNEZOVIĆ, from Croatia. He is research advisor at the Department for International Economic and Political Relations, Institute for Development and International Relations, IRMO. I guess I pronounced correct. IRMO is also a partner of this panel for the New Strategy Center, and is located in Zagreb. He's also a specialist in international European security and defense policy. The Croatian and Adriatic perspective of the Three Seas Initiative highlights lessons about the security implications of the LNG terminal in Krk. Is correct?
Krk. It's
Krk.
a little bit difficult to pronounce. K-R-K. Krk.
Krk.
Okay.
And the link between Western Balkans, EU enlargement, and the Three Seas geography. Croatia is one of the few EU member states where Three Seas Initiative enjoys consistent bipartisan support, partly because of the Krk LNG terminal and Pelešac bridge. The political geography shows that Three Seas Initiative has the potential to integrate the Western Balkans. It's a dimension that could integrate Albania and Montenegro, but they are now partner participants, but Bosnia, Serbia, Kosovo, and North Macedonia remain disconnected. This gap is also exploited, or could be exploited by other competing actors like Russia and China. So, we have a few questions for you, sir. What does Croatia want from 3Cs initiative in 2030? A stronger Adriatic vertical, Krk, Rijeka, Pelešac, full Western Balkan integration, or institutional consolidation in Brussels?
Thank you very much indeed. Let me start by thanking the organizers and Mr. Scowcroft in person for inviting me here and giving me an opportunity to participate in such an outstanding event. This is my extraordinary pleasure to be here. When it comes to a question, Croatia's primary 3Cs initiative objective by, let's say, 2030 would be to strengthen the Adriatic vertical, positioning itself as the main energy and logistic gateway between the Adriatic and Central Europe. This fits well into wider, changing, turbulent geostrategic environment we live in. The key priorities would be expansion of the Krk LNG terminal as a safe and viable supply route for the Central European states and beyond, modernization of the port of Rijeka, which pretty much goes along with the first priority, and improved north-south rail and road corridors, and stronger energy interconnectivity within Central Europe. So Croatia sees this initiative, so to say, as a way to correct the historic West-East infrastructure imbalance inside the EU and reinforce the Baltic-Adriatic Black Sea axis. Of course, we are bordering the Western Balkan region and we are very concerned by the instability that happens there. So Croatia prefers gradual project-based inclusion of Western Balkan states, alignment with the EU frameworks, and of course avoiding the import of unresolved regional disputes within the 3Cs initiative structures. So the idea is to use the 3Cs initiative in the region to improve regional stability and of course to reduce external geopolitical influence. By this, of course, I'm aiming at Russian and Chinese influence in the countries of Western Balkans, especially those with unfinished state-building processes. And of course, strengthen Southeast European connectivity to the EU market as an incentive for the long-term Europeanization process in the remaining candidate and potential candidate states in the Western Balkans. On institutionalization, of course, Croatia favors stronger coordination with Brussels, but doesn't want 3Cs initiative to become a parallel political bloc within the EU, obviously. So it's a pragmatic, infrastructure-driven and investment-focused approach to the initiative, closely aligned with EU cohesion, energy and transport policies, obviously. Strategically, Croatia wants 3Cs initiative to reinforce its role as an Adriatic gateway, as a Central European connector, and a bridge between the EU and Southeast Europe, and a channel of Europeanization process to the countries in the focus of the process of stabilization and association. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. How does Zagreb assess the Western Balkans risk for the 3Cs initiative? And is actually Serbia integrable in this format or on any realistic timeline?
Thank you for this question. That's a very relevant question given the political geography we live in. Croatia sees the Western Balkans as both the strategic opportunity and the main geopolitical risk for the 3Cs initiative. Let me try to explain why. Zagreb supports greater regional connectivity, but as I mentioned before, intends to avoid importing unresolved bilateral disputes, and we all know that in the Western Balkans you still have bilateral disputes. You have unresolved statutory issues like in Kosovo, you have barely functional state apparatus like in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So Croatia tends to avoid also importing governance instability and geopolitical ambiguity within the 3Cs initiative. It prefers gradual project-based and infrastructure-focused integration. When it comes to Serbia, I mean, it's geographically indispensable. You know, main routes going through and around Serbia, and its geographic location, I mean, underlines the importance of Serbia. However, there are some problems that Croatia sees in Serbia which does not make the country as a reliable partner. First, the country strategically balances between the West, Russia, and China. Its limited alignment with EU foreign policies. Let us recall the fact that Serbia hasn't introduced sanctions to Russia after Russian aggression in Ukraine. Its close ties with Russia and China, Kosovo-related tensions, and periodic nationalist rhetoric. So from Croatian perspective, Serbia is realistically integrable only in a functional sense, meaning in the area of transport, in the area of energy, logistics, and connectivity projects. Full political strategic integration into the core logic of 3Cs initiative is seen as unlikely in the near term without stronger Euro-Atlantic alignment and also differentiated and more calm rhetoric in regional affairs.
Yes, I would like to address you one more question. How does Croatia see the relationship between 3Cs initiative and the EU enlargement to the Western Balkans? Is 3Cs initiative a constructive vehicle, a complementary one, or a distraction?
It's primarily a complementary tool to the EU enlargement. I mean, it's there to improve connectivity, to strengthen energy resilience, and accelerate infrastructure integration. And also, in the long run, to gradually anchor the Western Balkans more deeply into EU-oriented systems. Croatia believes that the 3Cs initiative can support Europeanization through connectivity. If you connect the region, where countries are still waiting to join the European Union, you integrate them closer into EU normative-based way of doing business and more predictable and reliable behavior as partners. You create viable transport corridors, you enforce LNG and energy diversification, create precondition for the development of digital infrastructure and regional supply chain integration. Especially after Russian aggression on Ukraine, after 2022, Croatia increasingly understands 3C initiative as a part of a broader European resilient security architecture. So it also supports selective involvements of Western Balkan states in different 3Cs initiative-linked projects to reduce external geopolitical influence, regional interdependence, and strengthen Euro-Atlantic alignment. So obviously, the initiative shouldn't become a substitute for EU membership, shouldn't become a geopolitical waiting room, or a pool to bring in or introduce the existing political instabilities that are permanent in the Western Balkans. Croatia prefers EU enlargement as a central political framework, with 3Cs initiative functioning as a complementary infrastructure and connectivity mechanism.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive answer. Now I would like to invite Mr. Kaush ARHA from Atlantic Council to enter into a dialogue with us. I want just to highlight that he is the architect of the trusted connectivity concept that links the 3Cs initiative, IMEC, and the Trans-Caspian Middle Corridor into a single Indo-Pacific Mediterranean Atlantic architecture. There's a formal linkage between IMEC, 3Cs initiative, and the Trans-Caspian Middle Corridor with Constanța, Gdansk, Trieste, Rijeka, Piraeus, and Thessaloniki as named European nodes, and the Danube is the missing link that converts 3Cs initiative into a real Euro-Asian corridor, and that Romania has one-time opportunity to claim the integrator role. What geopolitical objectives underline the launch of the IMEC corridor, and how does it intersect with European connectivity strategies toward the Black Sea and Eastern Europe? Is IMEC truly a Western answer to Belt and Road Initiative, or is primarily an Indian-American Gulf project in which Europe is secondary, even passive stakeholder.
Thank you very much. First of all, heartiest congratulations to Croatia for an excellent 3C summit. So thank you very much. And I think Croatia deserves a lot of credit for being one of the key countries with Poland in launch of the 3Cs initiative. And again, at the moment, I think in the new 3Cs version, energy has become an important element, and Croatia again is leading the effort. There were a lot of discussions mentioned, and there's a theme here which I am having a lot of impatience with. So with all due respect, it is getting a little boring for me to talk again. Is Europe get left out? Is Europe getting left out? Is Europe getting enough love or not? Is America not loving Europe? Is 3Cs doing it's really not about that, and that's a wrong way to look at it. More you're going to ask those questions, more I think irritating most people from my side of the world would be. The question really is, what is good for Romania, what is good for Croatia, what's good for Serbia in their own interest, and what are the overlaps with American interest in these given issues? So you asked me about IMEC, whether it's something cooked up between US and India. IMEC started by President Trump, Abraham Accords, normalization of Middle East, of relationship between Israel and UAE and other countries. That is what led to IMEC. After that, it turned into something under President Biden, a I2U2, an India, Israel, UAE, US coordination on issues related to economic. And India took the lead on this, which we supported back from Trump 1, that when we come up, it's, as you mentioned, G20 2023, that they will have an India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. And the reason there was 8 countries signed it, and it was in the interest of all 8 countries. And let's not get hooked up on corridors and initiatives. I don't think you're wrong to say that IMEC is stymied because of Gaza. IMEC is not the answer to Indo-Mediterranean trade. 90% of that goes through Suez Canal, will continue to go through it. There was a need to have augmentary side, sort of something that builds the resilience that if there was a tanker in Suez Canal that got stuck, what will we do? Should we have road and rail network? Is that an interest of UAE? Is that an interest of Saudi Arabia? That was a good idea. After Sea of Hormuz, it's become a necessary idea. So everybody, if you just read Financial Times, read the articles by UAE and Saudis, they'll say we are building these sort of a network. So that's what that is. And what's the 3Cs? 3Cs is nothing new. Back in Roman times, there used to be something called an amber road. Amber road was where ambers from Baltic Sea came down to Adriatic to Achaia. You call it 3Cs, you don't call it. In the Venetian times, there was this what we call today a middle road. From Venice, caravans went in all the way through Turkey, across Caspian, Black Sea to Central Asia. So these are the recreation of old historic truths in the history and interest of all that. Now, in this context, it's important to see whether President Trump comes in. President Trump has made, and is in national security strategy, national defense strategy, every time he speaks about it, he is into economic first, economic-led diplomacy and sort of diplomatic relations. So he's talking about where it makes sense and why does it make sense for the partner country, for America to engage into economic relationship. That underlined the first thing he did was to sign an agreement with Ukraine on both its minerals development and its energy development, nuclear modernization. It is working with Romania on the offshore gas. It worked very strongly with Azerbaijan and Armenia to do the TRIPS, the Trump route for international peace and prosperity. Is engaged with Central Asia for energy development, and hopefully we'll get a Caspian pipeline that can come across the Caspian. In this context, how does fit in on the, you asked the question to my good friend, and I couldn't agree more with him, and thanks again for energy. He would have very little patience for one element that you said, that there are some political things here and there in the Balkans, and that may stop it. That is not how President Trump looks at it. President Trump says, I want to see economic growth and economic connectivity. I want to see a future in which economic relations and economic special interest of people bring them together. I do not want to be beholden to the past, because everybody in Europe, not only in the Balkans, from Alsace to everywhere else, there are some issues related to some people, there's some historical grievances. I don't interested in that. Let's talk about connectivity. So as we're working on vertical corridors with our good friends in Croatia, we're working similarly with our good friends in Greece, going up to Bulgaria, going into Serbia and the north, working with Bosnia, going into Serbia. So our engagement will be looking into that aspect. Whether it's a 3 Cs, whether it's not 3 Cs, whether we call it vertical corridors, the fact of the matter is we cannot, as you rightly mentioned, ignore the largest economy and central economy in Balkans. And if we cannot be talking about Danube corridor and say that, Serbia cannot, because either an EU country or problematic, because without Serbia it would be difficult to do something on Danube. So our engagement on this element, but coming back to this point of how these things link up, is not some Brussels or DC plan, like a Beijing plan to say, here's how I draw this line, here I draw the Middle East line, here's how the IMEC, and they all come together. It's in Croatia's interest to become the LNG port for Central Europe. It is in the interest of copper to become the largest car importing in Slovenia next to you. And it is in Trieste and Italy's interest to again play the historic role. It is the interest of Serbia to become both not only Danube, but be the connector between Adriatic and Black Sea, either through a train or through Danube corridor. It is certainly in the interest of Romania, as my good friend mentioned earlier, whether it's a flank country or a connectivity country. Historically, it played the role across Black and Caspian Sea. I don't know when it decided not to do it, but that is where really the history and Romania lies. And I think the most important thing with our good friends in Poland, if I just to make 2 points on this before I give it back to you. At this moment, it is more important to talk about whether it's enlargement, whether it's somebody's left out or whatever. What are the physical, practical projects we can do? There are 2, if you're looking at it, related to our group here. There needs to be a connection between the Black Sea and the Baltics. It has to be something that connects Romania, Moldova, Western Ukraine, Poland, and Gdansk. That ought to be the only #1 priority. Every other academic discussion, whether it's, that doesn't happen, there is no 3 Cs. If it happens, all good questions come to place and America will play. The second has to be to connect the upper Adriatic, whether it's to Reka, whether it's Koper, whether it's Trieste, to Belgrade, to Constanza and Black Sea. These are 2 fundamental elements that needs to be prioritized, and I hope we can talk more about them specifically than having the similarly sort of generic discussion about where these initiatives hang today or go for. But thank you, I went a little bit over.
Kaush, how would you frame the role of the Danube for IMEC and the 3 Cs initiative on the route between Central Asia and Western Europe via the Black Sea?
Again, I think we had a dedicated panel on Danube, but Danube today needs to be a priority corridor for dual purpose. We're going to hear a lot. We're going to hear, I think, at the parallel session going on right now about perhaps a dual purpose infrastructure. It's the most important military mobilization corridor and the most important transportation corridor, particularly for agriculture and for open bulk goods. That's what go on these river drafts. Agricultural potential of the plains of Serbia and of Romania put together, connected with Danube River, is a game changer. When agricultural modernization will come through this collectively, this will be as big of an agriculture base as Ukraine has. What will connect them right now? Not road and rail. It will be either most probably this river and hopefully a train connection that comes through it. This will be really, really important stuff. How does this connect to what you asked, IMEC and for the middle corridor? I would urge you to look at these corridors not as a single troop, but more like economic activities happening, and look at it more like tributaries of a river than one main river. So the fundamental thing that drives IMEC today is India-EU FTA. India-EU FTA will drive, because India and EU have signed an agreement. They right now trade about 250 billion. They want to trade about 500 billion in the next 5-10 years. Same thing with the US. India want to trade about 500 billion annually with US. Most of their traffic is going to go through Suez. Most of their traffic is going to go through the Indo-Mediterranean. Both Europe, both America, and 3 Seas is very, very interested at this moment to develop the potential of energy in Black Sea, in Caspian Sea, and in South Caucasus, and link the Central Asia to. Central Asia is the closest energy source for Europe to be able to deal with the energy resilience. That's a broad network that's going to happen. So these are two important economic transformative events happening. Europe and America's engagement with Central Asia, Caucasus, across Black and Caspian Sea, and the Indo-Mediterranean trade. They all come together in the southeastern part of Europe. Either they come through Aegean Sea, through Greece, they come through Adriatic Sea, up on all these neighborhoods. That's where they're coming together. Whichever country can come together better and say, hey, let's talk about linkages as opposed to historical rivalries and disputes, they will get ahead of the game. And I think that's where President Trump, that's where I think our United States, if I may say, this is what we did in first Trump. I think this is what they're still continuing to do it. The #1 guy who comes to 3 Seas event is Secretary of Energy now. It used to be different in first Trump. So that just gives you the signal of where the United States is looking into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Mr. Florin SPÂNTARU to join our discussion. He is Director General of GRUP FEROVIAR ROMÂN, GFR, Romania's largest private rail freight operator, part of Group. Mr. SPÂNTARU is a former Minister of Economy of Romania with direct experience in defense industry strategy, the Green Industrial Plan with the World Bank, the technological transition, and the non-energy mineral resources strategy. With more than 25 years in the naval and industrial sectors, Damen Mangalia, Galați Shipyard, Anconav, Sea Europe, OECD, WP6, he offers a rare combination of senior policymaker, industrial executive, and rail logistics, operator perspectives on the Danube and the Black Sea axis. Mr. SPÂNTARU, I guess you are the panel's reality check on rail and intermodal logistics, rail to sea via Carpathia, the Danube Black Sea Canal, the Constanța hinterland, and the Galați and Giurgiulești river ports. I suppose that without aggressive investment in rail electrification, gauge interoperability, customs digitalization, and rolling stock manufacturing, IMEC goods will arrive in Constanța and stop. It would be interesting for us to understand the strengths and weaknesses of EU and national co-financing, the public procurement, bottlenecks, and slow integration of Moldova and Ukraine into the European rail and energy networks. I will start with a question. What are the 3 or 4 investments, locks, deepenings, rail bridges, ICT that would unlock the full Danube capacity for 3 Seas initiative, IMEC traffic?
Silviu, with your permission, I would like to extend a little bit the discussion, since
yes,
I was one of the direct participants in all the discussions regarding the 3 Seas initiatives, especially on the event which has been organized in Bucharest and on Warsaw. And I was also the representative of Romania in another initiative which is not mentioned there, which is called Global Gateway. Because this is also another link which is missing from our discussion. So let's set the things right. The 3 Seas initiative started because we have seen that the Central and Eastern European countries, they were acting like silos, very much depending on the initiatives coming from Brussels, but not really connecting these countries, which can offer a more, let's say, a stronger position within Europe on the single market initiative, which is in fact the only positive result of the European Union construction. At that moment, there were some funding which were coming from different countries. Poland, Croatia, Romania were one of the major players, and the discussion was how can we connect Dansk with Constanța through the railway, and how can we put the money together in order to have projects which are not funded by the European Union. Some of these projects they have been achieved, although you know the Draghi report and Mr. Letta report stating that if you want to go from Rome to Gdansk, you cannot go by railway with one let's say direct transport. You have to stop in every moment because there is a lack of strategy and connectivity between these European countries. Does this 3Cs initiative reach its limit regarding that? For sure not, but as you stated, there is a serious underfinancing, since there are also some other European financing initiatives which are addressing some other things. One, it's safe, resilience plan, industrialization, which I don't know by how can we find something like 750 million euros to match the, let's say, the gap between Europe and the other regions in terms of economy. Danube corridor, who remembers what was the purpose of Danube corridor, by the way? I think almost anybody, even the decision makers, what was the purpose of these initiatives which were started by, if I remember correctly, by the Chancellor of Austria and Mr. Tăricianu in 2007, and we do not made much about it. So we are going one after the others with different initiatives, but not finalizing, let's say, what has to be done in that respect. And there is also another initiative, yeah, the Global Gateway, which is stating, as Mr. ARHA said, connecting the energy, bringing the energy between Central Asia to Europe through different initiatives which are disputable even between European countries. Romania being one of the beneficiaries of that, but also not having the real financing for this kind of project. In this context, the thing is how we are going to act. What kind of, let's say, initiative, what kind of decisions do we need in order to make sure that all our ambitions of economic growth, some of them conflictual between the countries, because there is one thing to go with your trade in Rijeka and copper, and there is another thing to go to Constanța and you have a different route. In that sense, we, the Eastern and Central and Eastern European countries, we have to sit together and to identify, okay, what do we really want? What can give us, let's say, a better economy strength, since the role of these Central and Eastern European countries is more important in the European Union than it used to be before. I mean, if you count each country having something 9-10 million people, except for Poland and Romania, as a separate entities, you will find out that our position, each individual position is not so strong in the European Union. But if you put them all together, then you'll become really strong. I mean, there is no, let's say, group of countries which can have a better position than these countries. In that sense, with all this, let's say, distribution of the funding between different countries, and I'll give you one example. Romania. When we are talking about the funds for the cohesion funds 2021-2027, or the national resilience programs, you will see that there is no, partly ideas how can we connect to the other countries. And then we had the crisis. We have the energy crisis, you know very well, Romania, Hungary, Austria, Croatia, all these countries, we are having one of the highest price of the energy compared with the other regions. Why? Because we don't have connectivity. I mean, we cannot move the energy between the countries because we did not make a big investment in that. If you are talking about the, let's say, the railway from Constanța to Arad, you make 3 days, something like that. And if you go even further, I mean, it's optimistic, yeah? But if you go even further, then you will find out that from China to Constanța, it's faster than between Constanța and Gdańsk, and the distances are completely different. Why? Because we are not thinking how we are going to do that. Our solution and our position is that simple things can give better results. Think a little bit about the history, and I agree with you. Yeah, think a bit what our ancestors did, and try to make it, and don't try to reinvent the, let's say, the economic flows. And by doing that, you can, for sure, you can find out that everybody can benefit of it. Yes, we are talking about a lot of money, and I would really expect that the position of other regions, Middle East, US, to be stronger in this region. Also, from our side, to be a little bit more friendly with these countries, with these regions, in terms of access and developing projects, in order to have the proper funding for these initiatives. And then if we are going to make these things happening, for sure we will have fast trains, moving the cargo, getting the business at competitive prices, because that's also, let's say, the subject is not only the wish, but also the will. It has to be the will to do that. And then I would really suggest that the whole IMEC initiatives to be considered as an opportunity, as an accessory, compared with what we have to solve here between European countries.
Do you have any proposal or recommendation to improve the working framework and integration process for reaching a common goal between 3Cs initiative countries? Or
yeah, I think what we have to figure out at this moment is how can we create a funding which is serving all these initiatives from the 3Cs, because there are a lot. Not all of them really talking about all the countries and the major objectives, but honestly, you cannot, with the funding we have now available, you cannot get all these initiatives, and you have to make a priority. Okay, we brought Greece into that, we brought Germany into that now. So more and more countries are coming in these initiatives, but do not ignore the fact that the 3Cs initiatives does not really have an alignment with the European Union initiatives. And that is a subject which, to my opinion, has to be brought at the level of the decision makers.
I'd like to respond to that, but
yes, please.
No, but wait for Margot to go have her say, then I will respond. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Please, but first I have to introduce you. Małgorzata?
Yes, it's Margot. It's much easier.
For friends. Thank you. Marco is Doctor of Law, Assistant Professor at the Institute of Political Sciences and Administration of the University of Zielona Góra, member of the Global Institute of Law in Oxford and expert of the Oriental Law Research Laboratory of the University of Wrocław.
This is my academic bio.
Your
Okay,
academic
so-
bio. She's
Yes.
co-founder of the Opportunity Institute for Foreign Affairs, an independent NGO promoting civil awareness, democratic values, and international cooperations. The manager of the Institute's flagship 3Cs 1 Opportunity project, which brings the Polish civil society and academic perspectives on the 3Cs initiative as a long-term strategic identity for Central and Eastern Europe. Do you want to add something to what was said before, or?
Like, I've got like a lot of remarks here. So, like, first of all, like, kudos for the summit. It was great. Like, Romana Vlahutin did a marvelous job, and in fact, that summit was a breakthrough. Because first time I'm researching 3Cs initiative for like 6 years. I'm also organizing annual conference on 3Cs initiative. This year we're going to have like 5th edition, so I've got a little bit of continuity and a history in that. So that was the first time that the official big summit was talking about the 3Cs initiative as a geopolitical and geostrategical concept. So we are talking currently about something much, much bigger than only 3 pillars of 3Cs initiative, which are the cornerstone of this initiative, which is like energy diversification, connectivity, and cybersecurity. So this is like one thing, that we are talking about this initiative as something much, much bigger than only connectivity. Because the main goal of 3Cs, well, in fact, I would have to say all the same thing that Kaush said, because I just follow his concept and I agree almost totally with him. So this is one thing. On the other hand, so because I've got some notes here, I did some. So in fact, all of that you were saying, that we have to work on a direct project, it happened. Even during the summit in Dubrovnik 2 weeks ago, right? There was presented a package, for example, for Ukraine, that extension on Via Carpathia directly to Ukraine, extension of rail to sea to Odessa, dedicated, this is like gas, so there is an option for joining Ukraine for the infrastructure of the eastern flank. This is one thing. 2 weeks ago, there was a launch information in Polish mass media that Poland Ministry of Infrastructure is interested in building a highway from Polish border to Lviv to make this connectivity flow much easier and the smooth flow of goods. So all of these projects that we're talking about here, they are happening, but of course, due to many aspects as a development gap, not only in the matter of physical infrastructure, but in an organization, in an administration, all that aspect, we need a little bit more time. If we're talking about the fund, during the Dubrovnik Forum, there was also a signed letter of intent to establish 3Cs initiative infrastructure fund of funds. With like enormous, like the initiator of it was a Polish Bank Gospodarstwa Krajowego, BGK, and Croatian HBOR, and Development Bank of Romania, and Lithuania, Slovenia, as European Investment Fund. So it's happening, but as you see, we need a little bit more time. Among experts, the concept of 3Cs initiative as a geopolitical and geostrategical initiative was discussed like many years ago. And after a decade, it just said out loud in the mainstream. So I hope that all the other changes won't take so much time. We will just, make it a little bit faster, more effective. But still, we are, this initiative is like fresh. It doesn't have much history. We're still learning a lot, but it's quite successful. So yeah, now I'm waiting for a comment.
So, we have a saying in America that sometimes you have the tail that wags the dog. Normally it's the dog wagging the tail. Every discussion of 3Cs in IMEC, like this one, is where the tail is wagging the dog. What do I mean by it? The main initiative, all these initiatives should be catalyst. They should contribute towards improved connectivity, not become another hurdle, another clan, another group. Why did Italy doesn't join? Because they have their own initiative called Central European Initiative. So they took them a while to join 3Cs. So all these sort of things. Now, who has the money? 3Cs will never have the money about the project you're talking about. So you can go round and round, even if you have funds of funds or Amber Fund or whatever fund. The biggest money here is European Union. Even Global Gateway doesn't have it. So where is the biggest money for any of this which you're talking about? It's the European Cohesion Fund run by Fito. He has the money. The second bit of money that's going to come from is the NATO commitment of 5%, of which 1.5% is supposed to be for connectivity. That's the real money. Now, if you're really going to talk about a strategic corridor, not Via Carpathia is a different thing, but as now a strategic corridor that, let's say, goes from Constanza to Chisinau to Lviv to Warsaw to Gdansk, the only source really about that money to come is from either EU or from NATO. Now, whether that has the 3C stamp on it, it doesn't have a 3C stamp on it, it has a Global Gateway stamp on, I don't care, nor should anybody else care. Similarly, the connection that's either going to happen on, with all due respect, I love the history lessons because, one of the things the history lessons does is sort of takes away enough time, but whether Danube comes back to the Danube Corridor Initiative or the Danube River Commission or the discussion that happened between Germany and Romania, it'd be great. Whoever takes the leadership now, it'll be fantastic. So the way to look at these things and to say is what is 3Cs, what is Middle Corridor, what is Danube Corridor, what are IMEC? These are inherently notes which provide political support, political coordination, hopefully, for the big money. Not get caught up in these issues which somehow are distracting. You are 100% right on putting IMEC differently, because IMEC neither has a fund of funds or whatever. It says India will spend the money for India, UAE will spend the money for UAE, Saudi Arabia will spend the money for Saudi Arabia, the other 4 European countries, and Europe wasn't left out. Half of the signatories are Europeans, EU, France, Germany, and Italy, and then the US. So that will take care of it just because there's so much money involved. But both in connecting the Baltic to the Black and the Black to the Adriatic, the really only game in town is the European Union cohesion funds. Everything else, we can have this discussion, have a very good stuff. So then the question comes, what is 3Cs? What we can do to support it. And I just request this, that's why I say, talk about one particular corridor, get money for it, put as many labels as you can from Global Gateway to 3Cs to, connecting of, reconstruction of Europe, integration of, Ukraine into Europe. Whatever that takes, focus on that as opposed to whether 3Cs is dead, whether 3Cs is strategic, whether 3Cs is not enough strategic, whether there's not enough money, because that's a discussion that can continue on, and at the end of the day is slightly frustrating, and it gives the wrong signal of whether that initiative is good or not.
So one remark, we use those funds to invest in an infrastructure. We use a Trans-European Transportation Network, which is part of European Cohesion Fund, to fund the Rail Baltica, partly via Carpathia. But, applying for those funds and receiving those funds doesn't mean that you're going to fulfill the terms to build on the terms of that fund. We've got that problem with Rail Baltica. right? That the deadline is 2030, and the Baltic states are openly saying that there is no way that they're going to finish it by 2030. So there are so much delays, even though that there are deadlines, terms, funds, and everything, right? We don't have these capabilities to finish this project.
I mean, you're right. So the one strategic demonstrable project in 3Cs is Via Baltica, Rail Baltica. Okay, most of them came from this chunk of money, not from the 190, 350 3Cs project, which is a power plant here, a factory here. And you're 100% right. You here do not hear 3Cs in the same sentence as Global Gateway and EU cohesion when you're in Brussels. So your point is 100% right. The only game in town is to make sure that you're represented in Brussels, don't care, but make sure that those three come together and put your priorities together. I mean, without that, and it'd be a mistake to keep separating 3Cs away, because you separate it away, you lose the money.
Mr. SPѱNTARU.
So this is what I was trying to say, that all these Central and Eastern European countries, they have to sit together to identify one project, two projects, three projects, which are really important for them. Because in the cohesion fund, and I know because I was a minister, I know how it works, every country is having its own interest. For sure, they will see as the 3Cs initiative with the different funding, and then the cohesion fund is to cover the priorities all these countries has. And then you have so it's a next level of the communication, of the discussion we are going to have, the strategic one, where we say, okay, we are one body, and I would not dare to say it's not about national pride and things like that, but we are one body. We want to get stronger, because let's face it, and since I have the freedom that I'm not a minister and a public person anymore, I can say it right. All these countries, they were the outsourcing countries for the developed countries in Europe. And then we have to change the structure. We have to think a little bit different. How we are going to do that? By sitting all together. And talking about that, because, okay, it needs time. But you know what happened in the meantime? In the meantime, there is a railway corridor which is connecting directly Greece through Bulgaria, Serbia, Hungary, not funding by the European, by the way, and also not by the Americans, which is organized by the others. And we will find out that by waiting all this administration and things like that, we are out of the game. And that's the problem.
And accidentally, just to mention, also Chinese have a exclusive contract for Piraeus harbor in Greece, which is an entry point for the European market. And this, of course, happened by mistake, as an accident, yeah.
But if this train corridor does get constructed, which, as you said, right, whether who constructs it, it's fine, I agree with you, but it is good. I mean, the product that will go will help all these four countries. I would just say one more thing to you. I couldn't agree more with you, Mr. Minister. So I think I would pick one project which actually connects the seas. We do, other than Via Baltica, we did not have it. Via Carpathia is a long way. I think an Eastern Plain train corridor, which should be a priority for NATO, should be a priority for EU, should be a priority for 3Cs. Pick one thing that connects Black to the Baltic, Black to the Adriatic. All countries will come together in it. Go to town with one thing that links them all. I think that's the way to do it, and everything would more or less fall in place.
I won't dive into negative topics, but I want to ask Margot, how vulnerable is 3C's initiative to internal political shifts in member states, especially in Eastern Europe and Italy as a strategic partner? What do you think?
Well, we were dealing in Poland with that problem because we have that governmental shift in 2023. And we had some of the projects, in fact, that were labeled as a 3Cs initiative were postponed maybe blocked, it's a too strong word, but postponed. Currently, the awareness of the potential of the collaboration in the Central Eastern Europe and the region is rising. But for me, it's hard to say, is it a matter of upcoming elections in Poland next year, or is it really acknowledging that that there is a potential because the current government is more focused on Visegrad group format or Weimar Triangle. But due to Italy, I have to say that joining Italy into TRISIS initiative is a very important aspect as a strategic partner. And just to make this short remark, a week before TRISIS summit in Dubrovnik, there was a strategic forum between Polish Foreign Minister Radek Sikorski and Italian Foreign Minister Mr. Tajani, and they discussed the strategic collaboration among these two countries, also recalling and referring to Amber Road. So this connectivity on this line from Baltic Sea to Adriatic Sea is still on agenda, not only Polish, but also in Italy, and in my opinion, in general, in Western Balkans. I'm sure that Croatia and Slovenia are also into that. Also, last year was launched a direct train from Warsaw to Rijeka. This year, the interest was so high among, it's like a tourist attraction, but still, you know, it's very popular in Poland, and this year the number of seats has tripled. So this is also a checking the connectivity in the region. But still, I think that the potential of this collaboration across the Amber Road is huge. And about that risk or vulnerabilities of government change, I think that every like sober-thinking government in Central Eastern European country should recognize any kind of regional cooperation as important. It doesn't matter how you label it. Is it Visegrad Group? Is it TRISIS initiative? Is it bilateral relation? It's very important. So in my opinion, even if there will be any governmental change, it won't in the long term influence the policy of each country.
Thank you. Sandro, please.
Very, very briefly, building up on what you rightfully have said, let me remind us all of the fact that we are witnessing over the course of I don't know how many decades in Europe a multiplication of different regional initiatives. So there are plenty of regional initiatives that tend to logically overlap with each other. So clearer vocalization of the priorities of every initiative, recognizability with the successfully implemented projects, clarifies the image of the initiative itself, and makes sure that the different interpretation and affiliation related to political philosophy in a question whether you support this or that initiative that is also very peculiar with the 3Cs initiative is cleansed. Because if you have a clearly viable program and a plan, with of course what you correctly had mentioned, with a clear budgeting structure and a deadline which is respected when it comes to functional implementation, you are cleansing the image of the initiative itself of unnecessary stickers. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaush, ARHA. Where do Moldova and Ukraine fit into this picture? Both are critical to the entire region and integration, but they are non-EU states, EU members, and thus creates legal and financial frictions.
I think the answer from American perspective would be very straightforward. At this moment, I think the priority for Europe, and to some degree America as well, but particularly for Europe, is the economic integration of Western Ukraine into Europe. That should be #1 priority. Before you join EU, before you join NATO, because you need it today for both supporting Ukraine's war effort, and you also need to lay the groundwork for its reconstruction. So irrespective of whether it's part of it or not, it is where money is going and it should be part of it. Now, how best to do this? If I had to pick one corridor without any label on it, which I would say the only corridor to talk about out of anything else, would be literally a corridor that connects Konstanza, Chisinau, Lviv, Warsaw to Gdansk. You build that stuff, you build a road, it's an economic corridor. That means there's a road network that goes through, a rail network that goes through, a power line that goes through, so you have a unified electric grid, that you have digital cables that go through, so you also have a digital economy base. That, and you can work it in bits and parts. It's not like something you work on. You just work on Konstanza to Chisinau part, Chisinau to Lviv, of course. You can have the offshoots going over to Gdansk and, Odessa and other parts of it. You already have Gdansk to Warsaw done, so that's not a main issue. You got Warsaw to all the way to Ukraine border is done. So there are parts of this that's very doable. And if I was from NATO perspective or EU cohesion perspective or the Ukraine reconstruction perspective, that's what I would focus on, and I'd put a lot of different things as opposed to talking about there's a good project in 3 Cs and they talk this. All these are little stamp projects. This is a game changer. Similarly, a game changer today is that, Upper Adriatic, when you say there's a train coming from, Warsaw to Reka, I mean, if you come down the train, there's a 10T corridor, which says basically Baltic to the Adriatic corridor, which is Trieste to Gdansk. You're talking about going to Warsaw for 10 days. Forget that. You cannot even go to a direct line from Trieste to Vienna. Okay, now it's happening. So you can go there in 4 hours now. Otherwise, you had to change to go to Trieste to Vienna. So to get to Trieste to Vienna, whether you go from Trieste, whether you go from Koper, whether you go from Reka, they all converge after a while within the same thing. So the question are, there are parts of this which need to be modernized from place actually in Slovenia, Dancia, to Ljubljana. If you modernize that, that's the bottleneck. Similarly, the bottleneck is from Belgrade, to come up to Timisoara. That's the bottleneck to connect it, as you talked about. So these are priorities which should be priorities for EU cohesion. If you come to America and you say this is #1 priority, and EU cohesion is not paying for it, and NATO is not paying for it, maybe it's not a priority then. You can talk about in 3 Cs and anything else, but maybe it's not a priority. So I think that's what I would say. And if you did just these connections, forget everything else, all the 250 projects that you see on 3 Cs. It would be such a great success that this is a bigger success than BRI, this is a bigger success than Global Gateway, this is literally out of the world success. That's what I think doable, that's what we should focus on. That's where we should put EIB, EBRD, America's DFC, Japan's JBIC, will all partner in this construction if that was the leadership taken over.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time. Thank you for your valuable insights. We really appreciate your contribution. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you very much. In 10 minutes in this room will take place another panel entitled Reinforcing the NATO and EU's Defense Technological and Industrial Base. Thank you very much.